This week in the enterprise security news, Ping Identity's Ping ID multi-factor authentication is now available in the AWS marketplace. 8,000 unprotected Redis instances are available on the internet. Tufin announces free firewall change tracker to enhance network security and connectivity for remote workforces. Simple advanced persistent threat emulation from Ixia with their Breaking Point product. In our second segment, we welcome back Farah Mavatuna, the CEO and founder of NetSparker, to talk about the time to measure security improvements in application security. In our final segment, we air a pre-recorded interview from RSA 2020 with Ed Bellis, the co-founder and chief technology officer at Kenna Security, discussing moving towards modern vulnerability management. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The Viavi Solutions Observer Platform provides SecOps teams a powerful combination of comprehensive data for threat hunting and incident response that includes wire data analytics and enriched flow records. Using pure, unaltered packet and net flow, Observer presents views across the entire IT infrastructure with threat alert features including scope, impact, and advanced traffic profiling. Teams can use automated workflows to dive into high-fidelity network evidence and more quickly resolve issues, minimizing impact on customers, users, and business operations. Learn more about the Viavi Network Security Solution and download free resources at securityweekly.com/Viavi. That's VIAVI. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Welcome, everyone, to episode 178 of Enterprise Security Weekly for April 8th, 2020. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Matt Alderman remotely. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Enjoying the Colorado sunshine before we get snow again this weekend.
There you go. Join Qualys for VMDR Live on April 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for a live demonstration of the game-changing vulnerability management detection and response offering a unified solution that integrates vulnerability management, threat prioritization, and patching in a single app. Register at securityweekly.com/VMDR 2020. We are looking for high-quality guests for this show, Enterprise Security Weekly, to fill upcoming recording schedules. If you know someone working in enterprise doing cool stuff that wants to come on the show and talk about it, you can go to our website and hit the guest suggestion form, securityweekly.com/guests. So please do that, and we review those suggestions on a monthly basis, sometimes more frequently, especially if we have some open slots. All righty. In the enterprise security news this week, what is with endpoint security companies, Matt? There's still a ton of them.
There are, but if you look at the announcements, right, you would think maybe it slows down a little bit with all the stuff going on. But what you're seeing is everybody shifting announcements to remote workforce. And so the endpoint players have a really strong play here because people have to protect all these remote devices that are now all over the place. So you just see a lot of announcements that are really helping people out in this time of struggle.
Or trying to. I mean,
trying to.
The endpoint security products, they have to be, number one, a really good product. Number two, they have to be configured really, really well in order to be even somewhat effective against attackers. And so I think there's a lot of gaps, especially if your remote workforce is solely relying on an endpoint protection agent. That's a really hard game to play because it's a cat and mouse game with the attackers, right? I mean, they're going to find malware infection techniques and different ways of exploiting your remote workforce and your in-office workforce as they were before everyone was working from home in just so many easy ways. Some more advanced ways, but basically they all bypass most of the endpoint protection that's around today, especially if it's not configured properly, right? Now, we do partner with many organizations, right, in the past that make awesome endpoint protection tools. Endgame now, Elastic, of course, always did a great job of trying to keep up and do the best. But I like the strategy, Matt, because the reason I've been thinking a lot about this is I introduced a Windows PC to my home. And you get kids on a Windows PC that's connected to the internet, like your infection time is ridiculous. And I'm like, I could put all kinds of antivirus stuff on there, but I'm like, it's still going to get infected. So like, why even bother? Let me just try and lock it down. Without the enterprise event and log management and network traffic inspection, I mean, that's just a losing game to go, I'm just going to go protect the endpoint, right? You really need to complete all of those different enchanted quadrants, as I call them.
Yeah, but it's very difficult now in this remote workforce environment.
Yeah, because you lose the network. Yeah.
Right, you lose the network. So how are you going to get the network traffic? You really can only rely on the endpoint. You might get some log data off of it, but where are you going to stream the logs, right?
Yeah,
where are these logs going to go?
Pull the logs
right?
off of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So this is a really challenging time. So a lot of people are leaning more heavily on the endpoints. I mean, look, CrowdStrike is a good product as well. You know, they did an interesting partnership with Automox here to kind of integrate not only the endpoint protection, but some patching. We see what Qualys is doing with VMDR that's adding vulnerability management detection and some patching into their solution, right? So we're seeing some enhancements here that are trying to help out, which I think are things we should have done years ago.
Yeah.
What I find interesting in the news this week is that all the traditional on-prem guys are scrambling quickly to get solutions out into the marketplace for the remote workforce because they were way behind the curve.
Right. Yes. Very much so. And CrowdStrike CrowdStrike doesn't do any patching, right? Automox is what would provide the patching.
Correct.
For CrowdStrike.
So there's a partnership between CrowdStrike and Automox. Automox is now in the CrowdStrike Falcon store that you can download, integrate in. So that now gives you endpoint protection and patching capabilities brought together. I think it's a good partnership, right? Maybe not as advanced as what VMDR is attempting to do from a Qualys perspective, where it's all in one vendor. But still, it helps the CrowdStrike customer base out to give them some patching capabilities.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great partnership. Ixia is announcing advanced persistent threat emulation. And this comes, Ixia bought, I think, Breaking Point Systems, which is where like HD Moore used to work back in the day. And it had some security ties, but it was more about stress testing, right? And they kind of pivoted a little into security. This announcement seemed very security related.
Yeah, I mean, this is your famous attack simulation kind of domain, right? I mean, when we think about it, it's looking to simulate different attacks and try to identify what those different campaigns look like. I just, the one thing it's interesting because I haven't seen a lot of activity from Ixia I think it's called their Keysight platform that they use. We just haven't seen a lot with them lately.
No, we haven't.
And I don't know how many enterprises actually use this technology. I'd be interested from our audience if people are actually using this. I just don't see a lot of it. I haven't seen a lot of it. So I don't know how broadly this platform is being adopted.
Yeah, I do like the strategy of attacking your network in an automated fashion. It doesn't replace things like pen testing or a lot of other things that you do, but it's kind of like that automated QA test that's always running.
Right. You need to augment it. You can't have a pen testing firm doing 24/7 pen testing, right? So this is an augmentation. You could. It's again going to be expensive.
Yeah, I think it's better to automate it and still do your pen tests, right? And
right.
And I think that the Chaos Monkey from Netflix and that kind of chaos engineering is really somewhat similar to the way you would do breach and attack simulation against your network and your systems, right? When you develop your applications, it's not exactly the same, right? Because breach and attack simulation is trying to go in and pivot and see how far it can get. When I talk to the folks at Verica, which is an early stage startup with some of the engineers that built some of that chaos engineering. I want to call it chaos theory, but it's not. That's something totally different. The concept of chaos engineering, right? So they have a startup called Verica. And we talked about some of the parallels between them, and they were very astute in saying, look, we want to test one piece of the application, one functionality, right, so that we don't cause a cascading effect. So they break it up into very small pieces so that you could test something in production with the right tools in place, which is what Netflix does, right? But when you do breach and attack simulation, you're doing small pieces but in a series, right? Trying to infect this system, and once I infect this system, go to this next system, right? Because I think there's less chance of an impact of those end user systems and Windows systems from doing that versus an application.
See, we don't even need a startup for chaos. We have it right now with COVID-19. You take 100% of your desktops, you unplug them from the corporate network, and you throw them all at home and see if your firewall continues to hold. That's chaos.
It's true. It's true. More your VPN concentrators, right?
Yes, exactly. Which kind of leads into that Tufin article a little bit, right? I mean, because that's what they're trying to do, right? Is they're trying to help organizations manage this shift from on-prem to at home and all the firewall rules that need to happen to change. We were talking about this yesterday, I think, or the day before on one of the podcasts, Paul, where, you take a desktop, because some organizations, it was our interview with Dick Clark on BSW. Yeah. He said, look, we see three types of approaches. One is they're literally unplugging the corporate network or a corporate PC and giving it to employees to take home and plug in. But he said, now all your firewall rules are messed up because what was inside is now outside. And so what Tufin's trying to do, I think, in this announcement is to try to help manage a lot of the firewall rule changes that need to happen to support a big mass exodus from on-prem to remote.
Yeah, and if you make a mistake in those firewall rules, it can be devastating, potentially. Someone sent me an article. I think it was Lee Neely sent me an article about Docker and how the Docker API being exposed to the internet and authentication not being there. I said, well, we do have Docker instances that don't have authentication, but I'm like, they're sectioned off in AWS networking and firewalling configuration. I'm like, I do really want to put that authentication in there or find a way that doesn't rely on that particular port. But if only like one firewall rule is protecting that, which it's more than one, but if you make a mistake, it could be devastating for a lot of your services, right?
Yep. Yeah, agreed.
Let's see. Recorded Future and ServiceNow have a partnership.
Yes. Security operations, incident response, analytics, bring it all together. We were just talking about this a little bit. One of the big challenges, I think, right now for organizations is how am I going to get this log data? How am I going to get this network traffic data? How am I going to correlate it to threat intelligence when a lot of my systems are no longer inside the network? I'm not sure how this partnership helps to solve that. I mean, this makes logical sense because we know what both Recorded Future and ServiceNow have been doing in SOC and incident response and those pieces. So at the surface, makes a lot of sense. The question is, are they solving a problem that people are facing right now, or is this back more when we get back to our traditional way of doing business?
Yeah, I mean, the devil's in the details. They talk about collecting data, triaging alerts, weeding out false positives, prioritizing threats. But exactly how does this partnership help with that is missing from this article. Hopefully there's some follow-on information about it, but I think the devil's in the details, right? How is it helping me streamline between these two? I think it has potential, certainly.
Yep, definitely. Can we say Redis configuration management? Oh,
is it Redis or Redis?
Redis?
I don't know. I
think it's Redis. I don't know. I call it Redis, but
it's probably
I might
Redis.
be wrong.
You're probably right. You've probably heard.
Doesn't matter. We have different accents in the Northeast, and
you've probably heard the term more than I have.
Yeah, maybe.
But this, so Redis is a message queuing database cache. Did I get that right? I haven't used this technology in a long time. Can you tell? Because I kind of hesitate. I haven't used it in my applications, and I'm like, it may have been in design meetings, like 15 or 20 years ago when I was doing a lot more software development in a different environment. But this is, this is a popular application.
Yes. It allows you to gain it's a remote dictionary server. It allows you to gain access to different information. But again, it looks like misconfiguration here. We've seen these before, right? We see all these S3 buckets open. Now we see a bunch of these Redis instances open. It looks like they're not using TLS or they're misconfigured. I mean, this is why configuration management matters, because it doesn't take a lot to configure something incorrectly to expose it to the entire internet.
Yeah, and without any password authentication. I mean, that's basically like leaving your database open. I mean, the Redis servers have access to the database, right? It's that abstraction layer between your database and your application. So you're not putting SQL calls inside your application. You're calling the Redis server. So, I mean, you might as well just have your database wide open to the internet, because that's not going to cause any problems.
Yeah. This is like Telnet, right? I mean, it's plain
pretty
tag.
much. Yeah, I mean,
unless you go into SSH or something,
it
right?
sounds like it's similar to the
same thing.
It sounds like it's similar to the Docker API, right, on 2375. If it doesn't have authentication, it's like having Telnet with no password, and people can go in there and upload new containers and remove containers and do all that stuff. Sounds like it's pretty similar with a Redis server. If there's no authentication and there's no TLS, it means anyone can access it and start doing stuff, which means if I'm an attacker, I'm maybe going to implant something that is siphoning off all the data from all of your calls from your applications, right, which could include sensitive data.
Yep.
It's bad.
Yeah. So did you read the CyberArk article on this whole secrets management piece? Now, this is part of the Conjure acquisition, I believe, is where this functionality comes from. Did you kind of dig in deep into this one? Because we've been talking a lot about secrets management with some of our code and stuff. I was curious whether you saw some value here in what they were trying to do.
The secrets management is interesting. I wasn't sure what they meant by self-service. And how you control that. Also, secrets are there's many different types of secrets, and it's not always clear how you manage them. So, for example, there's application to application secrets. In other words, if my one application needs to talk on behalf of my users to another API from another application, those are much easier. Those are, I mean, it's pretty well documented how you secure those, right? Because it's one set of keys for the application. Where I'm struggling with is, what if you've got users registering, right? Multiple users registering in your application, and each one of those users needs to have a separate pair of API keys that gives them access to one of their applications, right? How do you store those secrets? Because it's not just one for the app; it's one for one set for every user. So you can't use it. I mean, a lot of the articles will point you to environment variables, which, I mean, if you're managing them correctly and keeping them on a Git, isn't a horrible thing. A secrets vault is much better. There are also issues with the API gateway. A lot of people say, well, just use the API gateway, but the bug that you're going to run into is the same one that was at Bank of America, where the EC2 instance had access to that key, which gave them access to S3. Same thing with the API gateway. That key gives you access to the API gateway. So, well, you don't need a secret in your app. The secret's in that hidden HTTP web server that's on Amazon services. So that's to me, that's not a valid approach either. So it depends on your app and your use case, right? Mm-hmm. I'm still struggling with the per user keys and how you store those.
Got it. This one looks like it's a combination of their privileged access security solution, where they centralize the credentials, and their application access manager's dynamic access provider, which is supported through Red Hat OpenShift, Pivotal, or Kubernetes. So I think this is very application specific.
Sure. Which is the more common use case. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's what this looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having a vault, but it's like, at what point, like, how big does your application need to grow before you start implementing a vault, right?
True, but if you're starting to run Kubernetes,
oh yeah, you've
in
got
a containerized environment, you're there.
You're there. You're far way down that road, right? You should have had a vault a long time ago, right? In enterprise applications, yeah.
Because we have this conversation internally. Should we use Kubernetes? Do we need Kubernetes? See, so we're right at the cusp, right? And we're having these conversations about vaults and secrets and stuff, right? But as soon as you go over to the Kubernetes side, I think you're there.
Yeah. I think that putting the conversations with application design and development in the context of like just how large is your application and what the use cases are. Is it on one end of the spectrum a tool that you're going to let people download and use on their own, right? So it's a single user, multiple instance application. Is it a small application for a small subset of users and you only have a few of them? Then you start scaling up from there and you start getting into larger enterprises that are deploying thousands of containers, right? And that's where a lot of these much larger technologies come in, where you need solutions for all of these different junctures. You need a solution for managing your keys, right? You need a solution for deploying and scaling out all of your containers. You need a solution that is going to allow you to roll out changes into production in a specific way, right? Maybe by feature, right? I was actually talking with the folks from, what did I say their company name was? I can't. Verica, thank you, about some of these things, because they've worked on larger enterprise teams, so their minds are in that, the Fortune 1000, Fortune 2000 companies have these issues and are looking at these solutions. When I look at them for different use cases, I'm like, well, you have to be at a certain level. At some point, we need to create like a matrix, right, of like where you should be with your various technologies, design and security of your apps.
So not only do I need to do our categories, now I have to do like based on where you are, maturity and or capabilities, which ones you need and don't need.
Yeah. I mean, because I also think that we can't lose sight of the fact that enterprises may take off-the-shelf software and be packaging it and deploying it, which is very different from writing your own application, which is very different from SaaS, right? And then I think small, mid enterprises may have a couple of applications they develop on their own, but may also package and deploy maybe some open source software, right? And so how do you manage it? Do you need Kubernetes for that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, right. That's true. So, like I said, as soon as you go to Kubernetes, the complexity changes very, very quickly in your applications.
Yeah. For sure. AlgoSec has released a new version.
I think this is similar to the Tufin
I think so too.
Announcement, right? It's just trying to manage some of these network and firewall and other devices across this environment where it used to be heavily on-prem and now it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the cloud, folks.
Unisys always-on access powered by Stealth provides fast encryption for remote workers.
Yeah, so this is back to your endpoint discussion, right? Both this one and the BitDam one are interesting, right? And that I don't know how many people are using Stealth. It seemed to be a very interesting technology when it first came out, but there was a lot of people who are like, I don't know how well it works. What they're doing is leveraging that technology. Now it looks like on the endpoint.
So what is Stealth?
Stealth was this way to kind of isolate or kind of make devices invisible on the network. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how it worked.
There was a startup that was trying to do that too. Yeah. Make them invisible on the network. Yes. Exactly. I can't remember the name of the startup, but it was like it comes on the network and it's not visible to anything, and you set policies of what it can connect to and nothing else can see it, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So what they've done is it looks like they've ported that technology to some endpoint capabilities to also potentially protect these remote workforce PCs and devices as well. Interesting, because think about this. If you're an attacker, but you can't really see the device, does it give you some additional
Or if you're on the device
and
you can't see anything else on the network, right? Yeah, right. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I just don't know how well this works. I don't know how many people have actually used this technology.
Yeah,
it sounds interesting, but
agreed.
I don't know its adoption rate.
Well, cool. That will round out... Oh, sorry, one more.
was going to say the BitDam one obviously is around all the communication stuff with all the the video conferencing stuff.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure how it was going to support like what it provides for Teams and Zooms.
I don't know either.
Above any other, I mean, quarantining malicious files and all that stuff. Like, I don't know how specific. Are they just using Teams and Zooms as a way to garner attention? Because I would think that if you're protecting from malicious files and quarantining them, that should extend to a lot of different applications. Not just,
which means all they've done is added support for Teams and Zoom just because of the recent news announcements. Okay, but still,
I'm not quite sure how that. Yeah, and I mean, with Zoom, you very rarely share a file over Zoom, right? I don't even know if you can do that with Zoom. It's pretty funny when we have all these Zoom calls for the family, and they're like, "How's it work?" I'm like, "I don't know. There's someone at a other computer when I'm doing this remotely. I don't really use Zoom that. I mean, for just meetings here, but I don't get into any of the advanced features that just do a call with someone. So I've been digging in a little more.
You do a share, right? You do a video, can share your screen, but I don't know that you can send files over it. You can chat through it. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And all of those chats apparently are sent to the organizer. And really, I mean, just to speak to Zoom and Teams and all of these different technologies, you have to understand how or if various aspects are protected, right, and what they are. I don't think that any of them are necessarily more insecure or secure than the next. It's your responsibility as an enterprise, in this case, to understand how everything is configured and put together, to understand that, hey, when you chat, the organizer can see all of your chats, right? Very same of it mutes you when you're on the call, know how to use your mute button, set the password on it so no one else can join. You need a process for your tools and understand how they're deployed in their default manner and use them accordingly. Alrighty. Well, that will round out the news for this week. Stay tuned. Interviews coming up next.